All right. Hello, people of YouTube land, internet people, people that are part of the Cringe Crew gaming community Discord, and those that follow Ted and I on Twitch, and also people who are listening on Spotify or whatever audio platform this gets put on. I am Traductus.
And I'm Ted.
And this is the Cringe Crew Gaming Movie Review Podcast.
Yeah.
Did I get it right?
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah.
All right. And like I said before, we're doing Christopher Nolan films. And Ted and I, we watch a Christopher Nolan film and we review it and then we rank it. And unlike the Bond podcast that we did, which you should totally watch and listen to, where in that podcast I was the fan and Ted was the newbie. We've reversed it. Ted is the Christopher Nolan fan. I am the casual newbie viewer, although I've definitely seen this movie a handful of times. And that is 2010's Inception. Like I said, made in 2010 with a budget of $160 million with a box office return of $836.8 million, which seems kind of low.
I would imagine that would be higher, but I also recognize that this was the first film of its era in that, like, it became internet culture rather than maybe becoming a box office experience.
Well, and also, this is 2010. Inflation!
yeah, I'm sure that doesn't help. And for what it's worth, like, I will argue that, like, I think the budget was probably higher than it needed to be for this film. So the return on investment was maybe not as high as anticipated. We've mentioned it in other Christopher Nolan films throughout this podcast that, like, they spent every piece of that budget worthwhile, right? Like, especially as you get older and their budget was $300, right? for following, like, where the budget was, like, incredibly low. This one, like, I feel like they definitely spent more than was necessary to tell the same story. Contrast to previous films.
All right, before we get into this, I just noticed a trend here because I noticed this yesterday. I just gotta see. Let's see, Memento. It's audio. Oh, all right. Because I almost like laughed and giggled like a little kid, like I did with the last podcast, laughing at that the cinematographer's name is Wally Pfister. And he's been Christopher Nolan's cinematographer since Memento, and this is the last one that he Dark Knight Rises is the last one that he does cinematography for Christopher Nolan so far. But anyway, background, apparently this was supposed to be a horror film about dream stealing, but then it turned into a heist film due to the fact that Nolan said traditionally they are very deliberately superficial in emotional terms, and that's basically what I got. Also what Nolan was influenced by during like films almost about like a decade prior, which are films like The Matrix, Dark City, which I recommend. Dark City is very underrated.
Solid film.
Better than The Matrix. Fuck you, I don't care. We're already gonna piss off internet culture right now. The Matrix, good movie, but it has not aged well, and there's 2 giant ass plot holes in that freaking movie. It is not perfect.
I don't mean to break down The Matrix, but like that one was just a product of its time. If it came out 10 years later, The Matrix would be dog shit. Anyway, continue.
And then also the 13th Floor, which I haven't seen, but I've heard really good things about that. And basically what Nolan was trying to gather. He wanted principles in a world where you would question whether it was real or not. That being said, when we get into likes and dislikes, um, we're gonna talk about another movie that this was obviously influenced by in the third act.
Yeah.
Spoiler, it's a movie that we already covered.
Yeah.
But anyway, casting, as the main character Dom Cobb, we have Leonardo DiCaprio. Apparently, Brad Pitt and Will Smith were also offered the role, but ultimately DiCaprio got cast, and he compared his role to the haunted widower in a gothic romance, which
Okay. The gothic romance might be a little bit of a stretch, but not super far off that I can disagree.
right.
I do think now that you say it though,
I get where he's coming from, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like
the interesting part there though is that you say Will Smith. And this might be the first time in all of the casting considerations that you've mentioned that I think there may have been a better actor for it. Like, DiCaprio is obviously a fantastic actor, and I don't think he does a bad job in this role, but I think depth of character would have given something from Will Smith that you wouldn't get from DiCaprio because he's too involved with the gravitas of his role rather than the depth of the role. And this role, like, Will Smith might have been a better choice here. At least for my opinion. Anyway.
Then we have like his partner Arthur, who is played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, not to be confused by exploitation horror movie director Herschel Gordon-Lewis. Similar names, definitely two different freaking people.
It's funny that you mention that because the three name thing fucks me up every time. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I always want to call him Daniel Day-Lewis. I know they're very different people, but it's the three name thing. It gets me every fucking time.
At least I have like a,
there's at least there's at least a name that carries over from your three, and I get it. It's just the three name thing, man. Like it gets. I acknowledge it's a shortcoming, but here we are.
Apparently James Franco was also in talks to play Arthur, but he was unavailable due to scheduling conflicts. Which, that would not have been a better casting decision.
No, I don't have any problem with James Franco, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt was the guy.
Yeah. And if you don't know who Joseph Gordon-Levitt is, he was Cobra in the G.I. Joe films. He's also, if I remember right, in Third Rock from the Sun, right?
Oh, if he was in Third Rock, he would have been real young.
Yeah. He.
I haven't seen Third Rock since I was
Solomon.
a child. I haven't seen Third Rock since I was like 9.
Oh yeah, he's also Edward Snowden in the movie Snowden. But
you'd recognize him. He's got a very familiar face. I guarantee there are things you've seen him in. If you've if you've watched movies before, he's been there.
And which, by the way, I'm not a big fan of like the G.I. Joe movies, but he kills it as freaking Cobra. Such a weird casting, but it works.
How are the heroes supposed to know us if we don't yell our name every time we do crime? Cobra! Anyway.
Then we have Elliot Page as Adrian, a graduate student who is the architect for like the whole heist. I do not see any other person that might have been cast. Page said that his character acts as a proxy to the audience, and by the way, when I quote this, the character that Elliot Page plays is a woman. This was before Elliot Page was out as a trans man. So if we do slip, please give us a little bit of a break.
Thank you for the clarification.
Especially since the fact of the matter is that for the majority of Elliot Page's career, we thought that he was a woman.
Was recognized as a woman, not thought. Okay, small clarification, but otherwise, thank you for that. Yeah, Yeah.
But kudos for Elliot Page for hiding that from. But that being said, it says that she's just learning about these ideas and in essence assists the audience in learning about dream sharing. So it seems that everybody has like tidbits on like describing their character. Tom Hardy as Ames doesn't really. He is obviously the person that is the forger. I don't see any other alternate casting on that, but obviously Tom Hardy's gonna appear in a Christopher Nolan movie again. Same with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, with the next one being the Dark Knight Rises. Let's see. Apparently, Hardy described his character as an old Graham Greene type diplomat, sort of faded, shabby grandeur, the old Shakespeare lovey, mixed with somebody from on Her Majesty's Special Forces. Damn it! I thought it said on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Fuck!
We'll cross
Almost
that
jumped the
bridge
gun
later.
there.
Yeah.
We'll cross that bridge later. Then we also have Ken Watanabe as Mr. Saito, the guy that is hiring them. We saw him in Batman Begins as the fake Ra's al Ghul. We have for the chemist, Yusuf is played by Dilip A. Rayo. He is starred in the Sam Raimi horror film Drag Me to Hell, and also James Cameron's Avatar.
Yeah. We'll skip Cameron. Too many thoughts. Leave it alone.
Hasn't made a good film ever past True Lies. I would save past Terminator 2, but I keep forgetting they did True Lies. Which means is that all he's done afterwards was fucking Avatar. Anyway, we also have Cillian Murphy, who is the guy that they
Killian.
are trying to implant this. Oh, Killian.
Killian.
Yeah, thought we weren't botching this, but I guess Killian as Robert Michael Fisher, the guy that they are trying to implant the idea in, because that's what Inception is. We'll get into that when Ted describes the plot. Apparently, his character was kind of based off of like the Sons of Rupert Murdoch.
Interesting.
Which, yeah.
Notable little tidbit.
Which makes sense because Rupert Murdoch has a hell of a media empire. Not just including Fox News, but also National Geographic and what other shit that fell under the Fox umbrella that he hasn't sold off to Disney.
Yeah. To model it off his sons is super niche too. Like, hey, public figure who's maybe not a household name, or at least not a street-worthy notable figure, then model it off his kids who are even less notable, and that's where my character comes from. That's significant. That's a hard role to jump into and fill.
Yeah, I agree. We also have Tom Berenger as Peter Browning, who is Cillian Murphy's character's godfather and also a fellow executive at Fisher's company. Did not recognize Tom Berenger in this at all. Ted did.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, if you know it's him, or like if you're looking to recognize actors, absolutely like recognizable, but he completely and totally looks like absolute fucking dog shit. Like he looks like he is 40 years beyond death in this film for being Tom Berenger.
Yeah, especially since I picture like Tom Berenger being like this buff dude, and here he just looks like an old man. It's
absolutely.
It's a far long cry from Platoon.
Platoon is not where I expected you to go.
From his fucking Platoon. All right, give me a break.
He's been a bit character in so many things. I just really love that you went to fucking Platoon, because Platoon, the only thing I can think of is drugged out fucking Charlie Sheen genuinely not knowing where he is, and they filmed a war movie around him. Oh man.
We have Marion Cotillard, uh, who is an actor that was in Tim Burton's Big Fish, a very long engagement, where she got a Best Supporting Actress award from like the Caesar Awards, and then also uh, she had her first language major English language role in the movie A Good Year, which was starring Russell Crowe. But anyway, she plays Mal Cobb, like Leonardo DiCaprio's deceased wife. Um, and for
And 4.
try to see who else is like actually fucking worthy of.
Oh, Alfred's in this one again, and he's
I
Alfred.
I was gonna go up with Michael Caine later. All right.
I think he's your last notable one, at least the last one that
I
plays
mean,
a significant role.
I mean, there's Pete Postlethwaite as like the dying father of like Cillian Murphy's, but he's barely in this movie.
I think it
He's
might
just
be
kinda
a
there.
line and a half.
Yeah, he's basically best known for being Mr. Kobayashi in The Usual Suspects. He's David in Alien 3. I think he's also in Dragonheart.
You're asking the wrong guy.
Oh, he's in James of the Giant Peak. She's the Magic Man narrator, and he's also in Dragonheart. So he's been in a few things. He's one of those actors if you know him if you see him. But that's really what I got for like casting, and that's really what I've got for like background.
Yeah. Well, plot for this movie is a very complex telling of a relatively simple plot. Basically, the way this movie works is there's this technology that they have to enter your dreams in order to extract information from you while you're asleep. The idea is that you don't know that you're dreaming, or you're more lax in your dreams to be able to give away information, or your subconscious hides it in something like a safe, whatever, and this technology is used to go into the dream, extract the information, and then leave. They get the idea to incept people with information, which means not taking information out, but putting information in. The idea is that they're going to use this inception method to have Cillian Murphy's character give up control of his company to a rival company to establish a monopoly. The Leonardo DiCaprio's character is using this as a bargaining tool to get back to his family. You obviously uncover the fact that he's got a, I'll say, decorated past, and he's using this payment to get himself back to his family, to his real life, rather than just continuing to extract information from people's dreams, going layers and layers deep and really convoluting the storyline, especially towards the second half of the film. Easy enough.
Yeah.
On paper, easy enough. I think I'm going to start off with likes, if you don't mind, because I don't want to stray too far away from cast. So, as you were reading the descriptions there for like how the crew members fit their roles, I think what's very cool about this movie is that everybody has a specific job, and the actors specifically hit their roles to their function. I won't sit here and tell you that the acting was superbly phenomenal, like it was over the top good, like these were world-class performances. I don't think anyone by any stretch of the imagination was award worthy, but I think to fill the role that they were given was fantastic. Anyway,
Okay, award worthy maybe not, but there is one person I think does give a hell of a good performance, and that's fucking Tom Hardy.
I'm coming to Tom Hardy. You wait your turn. So the one that you mentioned specifically was Elliot Page, right? Who was supposed to be a bridge from the audience to the story. Elliot Page's character learns at the same pace that you do, right? Like they're the ones conveying what's happening to the audience. And I think there's a fantastic job with that. As you're discovering what dreams can do, how dream sharing works, how their technology works, you're learning that through the teaching of Elliot Page's character. I think that's really notable. And while that performance may not be flawless, or again, award worthy if that's the standard we're holding it to, the actor did a phenomenal job at making that role do exactly what it was written to do.
Yeah, I think he did all right.
Yeah, again, like nobody did a bad job by any stretch. The ones that are notable for me, or most notable to that, at any rate, DiCaprio does a fantastic job at kind of keeping things hidden. Like, I won't say emotionally shut off, but like the reason that I mentioned Will Smith might be better for depth of character is that there were so many levels to that main character that all required development. DiCaprio kind of kept it. This is where we are. This is where I'm focused on. You know, there are other things, and there's a darkness. There's a hidden secret. You don't get to know it because that's not where we are. So I would say DiCaprio did a good job for the role. Tom Hardy, like you mentioned, kind of played two roles. The first role was like extracting information, like being very good at the craft of Inception. Fit a phenomenal job, played an intelligent character. The other one's just being an outright fucking badass. They genuinely wrote "be a badass" in the script, and Tom Hardy's like, "Hey, yo, bro, I got you," and then he over delivered. And the other one, the other one for me was DiCaprio's wife in this film. I forget her character's name. The idea was like to be somewhat, I won't say crazy, I will say detached from reality. And filled that role phenomenally. Like, bought into their own delusions of what reality was, and then sold you on said delusions. Like, for all intents and purposes, for what the movie was, it was an absolute bit part, but oh my god, was that role absolutely fulfilled and then some.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree.
Another, to keep going with likes, if you've got nothing to expand on that, which is fine. The next thing that I will say was to stick on cinematography, because I know that's my usual trope. Set design, flawless. The setting of each individual piece, of each layer of the dream, of each like part of the storytelling was exactly where it needed to be. The set was built completely and totally in mind. It was very thorough. Everything was thought out, like, and everything had its place. There never felt like there was anything in the sets that was extraneous or too little. Everything was really well designed. The camera work, the special effects, flawless. I feel like there were elements of this movie that were very difficult to direct, but it never felt like there were any challenges with it. Everything flowed super smooth, super seamless. Everything was really, really cleanly done between the camera and the special effects. Really, really, really well shot.
Yeah, and also special effects I think are done really, really well and have aged honestly pretty damn well for, like, you know, being this movie being over 10 years old.
There were some points in this movie that were a little bit grainy.
Right.
I know that we've chalked a lot of especially last week, we chalked some of the sound problems up to the platform that we were watching on, and I think the same things applied this time. So I don't want to give the graininess like, Inception was 2010, so it must be grainy. It very well may have been the platform, but I also can't necessarily recollect from my previous time seeing this movie that it was super high definition, super clean. Everything was
right.
Completely like just seamless motion transitions. Yeah. So
for dislikes, we'll get into the sound later, because I remember the sound being not so much like the platform.
I can't give this one the same benefit of the doubt that I did the last film. But one other thing that I liked about this movie, my lists for both ends of this are actually very short. One thing that I liked about this movie was that it was very linear.
Yes.
So Nolan obviously has a very platformed, like a very scripted way of telling you a story out of order to make it the most dramatic that it can be and the most enthralling for the viewer. I think this one did a very good job of everything happened in order.
Yeah, to be honest, everything's just in a flashback. it goes from like A to B back to A, but like that's fine.
And the like the only reason that this would be not completely straight point A to point B is that multiple things are theoretically happening at the same time, and they do a very good job at juggling those things, right? It's not
Yes.
we're playing A and then we're playing B and then we're establishing that they're at the same point and then we go to C and then establish that's at the same point. Like you recognize that the timeline of A is going these 3 minutes cover this 30 minutes here, which covers this hour and a half here, which covers these 6 hours here as you go down in the layers, right? Like, and they do a very good job at, hey, we showed the van in astronomically slow motion for a quarter of a second to keep track of the 3 seconds that you saw Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the hotel room, to see that like the 2 minutes that you saw in the Arctic, to see the same, like everything, like it's in a line. There's no difficulty differentiating when or where or which timeline you're working in, and you know that all of these things are happening at the same pace. There's not any struggle to recognize the order in which this movie happens. I like the fact that Christopher Nolan can still mess with a timeline without messing with the timeline.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have much to add.
That's okay. I'm out of likes. Like I said, my list is super short, so take over.
Like I don't really have like to me it was like effects. I think the story was well done. I like the concept. I think the concept was rather interesting. But at the same time, I've also seen a lot of movies use dream logic a little bit better than it's been used in this, but I do like the concept of like a dream being a movie that has to do with dreams being a heist film.
Yeah, everybody loves a heist film. I have a diatribe on it, but I'll save it for the podcast. All I'm saying is that your brain is wired to like heists, so you're prone to liking this movie. If you don't have any other likes, I do have one observation before we get into dislikes.
All right.
So my big takeaway from this film, watching it now rather than the first several times I've watched it in the past, this movie came out at the perfect time. I think that there is a mystique about it that makes it very prone to internet culture. Not necessarily that the mystique is justified. I'll cover this a little more in depth when we get to Tenet, for sure. But there was something about it that made this not a very straightforward film. This film did require thinking, even though it wasn't like super in depth where you had to watch it 80 times to figure out what was going on, right? And I think that it happening in 2010 was like the big takeoff of Twitter, or where Facebook became not just catch up with your high school friends, but also like Facebook became a place to post your ideas, right? Like I think the confusion and the thought-provoking aspect of this movie really benefited from internet culture that made this movie seem bigger than I think it probably warranted, which kind of brings me back to your budget and your box office numbers, in that like maybe we expected it to do better because we saw so much about it, but also the internet may have contributed to making us think that like maybe it was a little more popular than it was. I just think that's something of note that's not necessarily a like or a dislike. To then move into dislikes, I first want to talk about the ways in which the dream layers work. So, yeah, I don't. What the fuck?
Never mind.
Okay,
I'm not gonna put on my douchebag sunglasses because that's gonna have a lot of glare, and I don't really.
I'm just confused as to why we needed douchebag Stahlman.
Because like I'm gonna go off on this.
That's okay. We'll get there. So the first thing that I want to mention is like the layers of the dreaming, right? So
yeah.
Basically what they establish is that you can go into a dream down 3 layers, and anything beyond that or upon like an unstable death would put you in this limbo period where you don't necessarily wake up when the target wakes up, right?
Right.
If you're considering that aspect, there are several moments in time where people die in the dream. They can be pulled in and out of limbo, whatever. All stages of like dying in all 3 of those layers will take you to the same limbo. I get it, right? However, They established that Cobb's wife dies because Cobb and his wife were stuck in limbo for 50 years. They built their life together. She went insane, quote unquote. She's stuck in limbo. He's trying to continue to dream to be in limbo with her without detaching himself from reality. My issue is that while they're in Fisher's dream, she still exists in limbo. And they never really establish why the limbo of Fisher's dream still includes DiCaprio's vision of limbo with his wife. There's just kind of a disconnect in the storytelling that like any limbo ends up in the same limbo or the same void place versus like, hey, every dream sequence has its own limbo rather than there are independent limbos from each other versus it's all one collective limbo. It's very not well described regardless of how you think of it. They just never really established that layer of the dream, and I really don't care for that. Although it makes the story better, it's not my favorite way to go about things. Stahlman pointed like he had a thought, but now he's leaning off camera, so I'm gonna filibuster a little. Maybe, possibly, perhaps. Anyway, yeah, I think it's very weird that they're 4 layers deep in Fisher's dream, and we're getting back to the place that DiCaprio said that he established 50 years prior with his wife in a different limbo from extracting information from a different target. Just bizarre.
Yeah, that's a honestly good thing to really point out is with that a little bit being an inconsistency. Which there's like another inconsistency that I could kind of think of. How like while they're already in limbo and DiCaprio is looking for Ken Watanabe's character. Like, it's like when you're in limbo, when you first enter into limbo, you wash up on shore, but it seems like he does this twice. And it's like, well, how did he wind up washed up on, like, is there like another limbo a port? Like, is like, does everybody have like their own limbo, or is it a limbo within a limbo, or what? It's
Or if the limbo is just kind of infinite, where falling apart in it means you end up like respawning at the same place, like a Call of Duty match, versus like layers of the thing. They don't do a great job establishing that limbo period.
but
The other thing that I really want to complain about here is that the ending fucking sucks. I wish that I could sit here and tell you that it's cool, that there's a seed of doubt that you never know whether you're in reality or in a dream layer, and you never really get that clarity. And I would love to tell you that whole like mind fuck at the end of, well, is this real or am I in a dream kind of thing, like is great. But like they do a really good job establishing that he is back to normal, and they've used this tool the whole time to know that like when things are normal with the spinning top and your totem and all that, and at the end it's just like, hey, but I get to see my kids, so I don't care if it's real or not, I can walk away. Maybe it's not real, the top is kind of wavering, but also it's not, it's staying afloat, right? And then like, but he also did a really good job while in limbo of rejecting to see his kids because he knew it was limbo, right? Like, so they, as great a job as they do of giving you that seed of doubt, like the end kind of devalues the whole thing as far as what is reality and what's a dream and where he is in that current moment. Like it really detracts from everything they're trying to do. I'm watching you bite your lip. I'm ready for the monologue.
Okay. We'll start with this, all right? And it comes out of fucking nowhere, all right? They kind of basically establish that, you know, the heist worked out. He was able to, you know, save Ken Watanabe's character.
Saito,
and then he comes back. And then at the end, it's just like, well, that's not an interesting ending. Let's make the top, you know, wobble a little bit, even though every time, you know, before they made it established that he always checks to make sure it's actually fucking real. And then even beforehand was like, I know that that this isn't real, so I'm not gonna go see my kids. Now it's like, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna see my kids. Who cares if I can find out if this is real or not?
And the worst part is that like they play on it several times. Like he's eventually going to see the faces of his kids, right? But like you also get the aspect of like his memory where that flashback is kind of deriving from. He doesn't see his kids' faces. So if you do see his kids' faces, that's not the memory. He distinctly remembers not seeing them. They ran away before he had to leave and flee, and now he sees their faces, but it's also not reality. Like it's just really fucking corny at the end. Like I would say the last like 2 minutes of film before the credits just really devalue everything they're trying to do for the rest of the film.
Okay, so can I go on the
Oh,
monologue now?
have at it, dog.
All right, all right, all right. I know how a lot of people, they go, this is such a crazy concept, a dream within a dream within a dream. And this movie's so good, the effects are great. All right, the freaking hype behind this goddamn movie is unwarranted. I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but it is very unwarranted. This is a good movie, and that's it. All right?
Yeah, I second that by saying that I think it benefited from being in 2010. Not sooner, not later. I think it benefited from the rise of internet culture.
And
continue.
The reason why I'm saying this, now the reason why I am saying this is because I'm comparing this to a movie that I've already mentioned that this was influenced by, and that is The Matrix. All right, another movie that was praised and hyped for its time when it came out. Looking back, now I will say that this movie's aged better than The Matrix because the special effects aren't dog shit like they are in The Matrix. The acting is actually decent, while in The Matrix it's either terrible, with the exception of Joe Pantoliano, because he doesn't do anything wrong. Oh, and also Hugo Weaving's actually pretty good in that. But like I was gonna say DiCaprio, but no, Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, and the Matrix, even Lawrence Fishburne are kind of like generic at best or terrible at its worst. Here, the acting in this, not bad. However, the characters in this are generic as fuck.
Yep.
Like it's just make a checkbox. It's like, oh, okay, Leonardo DiCaprio, you are the leader that has like a shady past. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, you're the partner that's a hard ass all the time for no freaking apparent reason, just because you're a hard ass. Elliot Page, all right, your person's the naive student that's finding shit out and just reacting to things as you see it happen. Tom Hardy, you're the sarcastic badass. Ken Watanabe, you're the guy that is the
That was a lot of us. I appreciate that.
I guess proprietary, the guy that hires them all, he's but also wants to be a part of the job so he knows that it's done right, but goes in way over his head because he's not supposed to be involved with the job, but he has to be because he has to make sure that it's done right. And then you also have Yusuf, who is the weird, goofy sidekick that's also the nerdy science dude that's like really obsessed with his work. And
he just happens to like drugs and sedatives. I mean,
it's very, very, very generic and just overdone. And when it comes to performances, all right, for once I have to say, I'm not going to complain about Elliot Page. I used to complain about Elliot Page just acting because I don't like Juno and I don't like any of the performances that he did with the X-Men movies. I just thought they were just kind of bland and just like meh. This, Elliot Page actually does very well with what he's given with. It's not spectacular, but it's not like stereotypical, typecast of like edgy young person with attitude, that tries to be hip. This is just like, just actually filling the role that he's asked to fill.
Fair.
So, luckily, not typecast. I will complain about Leonardo DiCaprio, because this is just a basic Leonardo DiCaprio performance. There is nothing more to it or less than it. It's not bad. Thank God we didn't get Romeo and Juliet level of DiCaprio, because when you get sappy, like, romantic cat DiCaprio, it's insufferable. Here you just get, like, grandiose, kind of full of himself Leonardo DiCaprio, which works in certain movies. It's all right in this, but, like, for complex of what the character is, someone like Will Smith could have done a better job.
I still second Smith would have been the better choice, and it might be the first time I could say that about this direction.
What else? Now, this isn't really a dislike or this is kind of more towards the like thing, but it also kind of annoys me a little bit. Now, I know that Christopher Nolan really likes the movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and I really like that movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And, it's cool seeing that within the last third of this film that they have, like, the ski chase and everything, that it actually looks like, the ski chase on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and also to an extent, The World Is Not Enough. However, the borrowing from On Her Majesty's Secret Service is very on the nose and is kind of distracting. And that being like, oh, the base looks like Piz Gloria, like Blofeld's base. There's even a damn avalanche. Like, how on the nose do you have to get?
All right, so my only pushback here, like, I'm not even disagreeing with you, but I'm a little bit playing devil's advocate for a second, right? And that,
right.
Like, I don't know.
That movie's from 1969. The audience isn't really going to know that, but
that's part of it, right? And there's also the idea that, like, Bond as a concept is bigger than Bond as an influence, right?
Right.
So I guess, like, if somebody's going to steal from James Bond, right? Like, to make it recognized
steal from one of the good movies.
Well, no.
Right?
I'm saying to like if you're gonna steal from Mission Impossible, right? One of the iconic scenes is like that music and then dropping from the ceiling with the zip line, right?
Right.
That, like, even though Mission Impossible has done millions of more spy type things, right? Like, that's the one that sticks out, and you're like, oh, that's stolen from Mission Impossible. I don't know that James Bond has that same kind of moment where most casual audiences are going to look at it and go, oh, that's James Bond. And I think that you can, if you haven't seen On Her Majesty's Secret Service, or if you're not watching,
you're not going to know.
Exactly. Like, it can be an influence that's a tip to the director, but it's not, like, overt to an audience that, like, hey, this is, like, 75% stolen bit.
Right. But when you're someone like me, it does make it distracting.
Like I said, I'm not disagreeing with you, but, like, so yes, but also no.
But here's my biggest gripe about Inception, all right? There's also, despite, by the way, I will apologize to a certain Florida resident that we know. Don't mean to make fun of Haley, but here's the thing. All right? This movie holds your hand a lot. Like, they do a lot to spoon feed you every single information that is shown, all right? Haley still got confused by this movie. And to me, that's kind of an issue when people can be confused by a movie that spoon feeds everything to you.
Okay. I don't have an opinion here. I'm not agreeing. I'm not disagreeing. What I will say is that, like, I feel like we may have the benefit of the doubt, both of us, both you and I, may have the benefit because we've seen this before and we understand how it functions. I remember the first time that I saw this movie, not necessarily being confused or totally lost, but maybe not having a full grasp on things. So
Right.
I don't want to just be like, it's too hard to get even when they're spoon feeding you like so bad, right?
I'm not saying that it's too hard to get, but I'm saying like I can picture like I just picture it being kind of annoying that it spoon feeds everything and still winds up being a little bit confused, you know?
part of
Confusing.
that part of that I think is Nolan's charm though, right? Like where usually it happens because of convoluted timelines.
Right.
But I know that many Christopher Nolan films are you have to watch it twice to really grasp it. You can get the majority of it watching it straight through the first time. You can enjoy it, dislike it, but you're not getting the full grip on everything they had views of until the end. And I think this one kind of works in the same way that even if you're partially confused, you understand the majority. Watching through a second time where you already understand what's going on gives you that full vision of everything going on. So I hate to call that a detraction. Like, I get why that might be a turnoff to some people and it might be off putting, but like, I feel like you kind of almost have to expect that going into a Nolan movie.
True. But another gripe I have also uh, that there are a lot of states where I think it excessively spoon feeds shit to you.
That's fair. That one's fair.
And see, it's just like, you know, I know that this movie could be a little bit confusing, but to me, it's like some things I don't think needed to be extremely spoon fed. I would have just been like, you know, whatever, that's how this movie works, and I would have accepted it.
So I love mentioning Fight Club, so I won't even apologize for mentioning it. Do you remember like in Fight Club when the big reveal happens and Ed Norton is still kind of confused?
Yeah.
And I think part of that is just Ed Norton's demeanor. I think that like watching this movie really puts you in that exact moment where you are Ed Norton, you've learned the reveal, but also still mildly confused. Like, I think that's where Christopher Nolan aims. I think he's literally aiming for Fight Club's Ed Norton at the reveal. That's what he wants you to get out of all of his movies. I think that, like, I agree with you that there's a lot of things that are super spoon fed, but I think also that, like, when they do spoon feed you, a lot of it feels like it's because they under-explained it earlier on and they were compensating.
Yeah,
To
right.
compound your frustration with that, like I wish that they had done a balance of explain it as it happens so I don't need to feel pacified later. But also like I don't think it necessarily takes away from the storytelling or the way that the film works. I do think there's moments where it's egregious, but I think as an overall whole, like it functions. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on that, but that's just things that really just kind of bug me
Yeah.
of this movie. I really don't have anything else to really add
Yeah,
to it.
I think that sums me up. Like I said, I'm surprised this one went as long as it did because I know both of our lists were short, but I think that's going to drag us into rankings so we can get out of here. For me, this was a really easy fit. I'm putting this one sixth. It's still ahead of Insomnia because Insomnia just bored the fuck out of me. This was a good movie, but I think it's the laziest parts of your Christopher Nolan tropes. And I also think that like it just didn't it doesn't grip you the way that other movies do. I think that this is especially watching them pretty close to back, you know, in the pace that we're watching them, not years apart. I think this is miles below Batman Begins, both in entertainment, in quality, in all facets. I think it's a significant detraction, but Insomnia bored the fuck out of me. Like that one's doomed to be the bottom of my list, and so I'm gonna put Inception at sixth. I'm not saying it can't crawl out of the basement, and I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not top five for his other films. Not even close.
Uh, Trying to think where how am I fucking our ranking. The only thing that's different with our rankings is
I think we flipped 1 and 2, and I think that was it.
uh 2 and 3 we we
Well,
flipped.
yeah, 2 and 3 now. Movies 1 and 2, positions 2 and 3. Yeah.
So if I remember right, yeah. So I just gotta think if I like Inception better than Batman Begins because it is better than Insomnia. Yeah, I'm gonna go with like the same place that you put it, just because like to me Batman Begins is more like better with like repeated watching.
It's also more palatable. Like
Yeah,
if I saw both movies on TV, I would watch Batman Begins and not consider Inception. Like, and I hate for that to be a threshold, but like, it's not close. If both movies are on and those are my only two choices, I'm taking Batman 100 times out of 100.
it's a little closer to me, but I think it's definitely a mile gap between this and The Prestige. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, well, The Prestige is a television movie. Like that. That is the ultimate of I can pick this up anywhere and watch the end. But yeah, no, I like I said, this is a good movie. I don't mean to make it 6 out of 7 as though it's like,
Right.
oh, this is bad, right? Like it's still a phenomenal film. But
Yeah.
it doesn't hold up to the quality of what else we've seen in this series.
Yeah, so who knows? Like, it definitely could bump up in rankings, especially since we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then when in July comes, we'll have the
Oppenheimer, yeah.
So, so we got enough for it to be bumped up here,
Yeah,
depending
absolutely.
on because how I feel about Dark Knight Rises after I watch it.
Yeah, I think you guys are in for a shock next week based on our first 2 Batman podcasts. I'm going to be honest with you.
I'm gonna piss off Ted on the next one. I know I am.
I really don't think you are. I think I'm going to surprise you more than you're going to surprise me.
And I've never seen Interstellar. Haven't seen Dunkirk.
I've been trying to watch Dunkirk. It might be the only one on this list that I haven't seen before. Except, well, I haven't seen Follow.
I was hammered when I saw whatever bits and pieces I saw of Tenet.
Oh, I love Tenet.
So,
spoiler: Tenet's a top 3 movie for me, like all time, Christopher Nolan or otherwise. So that one I'm going to fanboy a little, just as a warning. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap us up for this week. Try and cut it short when it's already longer than I expected it to be. As always, you can catch us both on Twitch if you're interested in the content. Stahlman's at Traductus and myself at Ted Green Eagles. Hop in the Discord. You can watch movies with us. I think by the time this one airs, we'll have 2 more movies to watch, but my count is always fucking off. And then we're planning on some other podcasts, possibly another director through the summer. Definitely some Halloween specials as we get towards September, October, maybe even into August if my count is right. So be sure to check those out. The podcast is going to keep flowing. That's basically what I'm here telling you. Thank you all for hanging. We appreciate you. And we will see you here next week for Dark Knight Rises. Yeah.
yep. See ya.